It's hoodie season, and that can only mean one thing. Fall is coming, the fall transition is here, those cold nights, the leaves are changing, those fish are in transition to their fall periods, and in today's video I'm going to break down everything you need to know about locating fish, catching them, and consistently staying on smallmouth bass through the fall transition to help you guys have success on the water. This is the time of year during the fall transition when these smallmouth can be relatively tough to pattern. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you guys where to fish, when to fish, what baits to be using, and how to go out and consistently chase smallmouth through this fall transition period. Now, for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Benjamin Nowak. This channel is dedicated to sharing with you tips, tricks, and on-the-water experiences chasing smallmouth, occasionally largemouth bass. If you guys aren't already subscribed, go down there, hit that subscribe button. It'll let you know when I post more videos just like this one right here. So let's kick this thing off by defining what the fall transition really is. And this for me is the period when you start to see those hard cold snaps in the morning and at night. When those night temps start to fall, your water temps are on the continual decline, these fish are going to start their progression to their fall areas. And what I mean by this is they're going to start moving from their deep summer holes, the late, deepest summer spots that they have, into those shallower areas where those fish are going to feed up during those fall months. Typically the water temps that I'm seeing during the fall transition on the Great Lakes, I'm talking 67 or below degrees. On inland bodies of water, it could be anywhere from low 70s to upper 60s as long as there is a steady decline. And that really is the trigger for these fish. With those colder nights, those shorter days, and consistently falling water temperatures, that's what's going to trigger these fish to start moving shallow. So what about the fall transition actually makes it so difficult? And for me, it's not that you can't go out and catch a bunch of fish. It's that it's very difficult to pattern where these fish are. Because they are in transition, they're constantly moving, and so you need to really junk fish. This is the time of year when you're going to have a bunch of different rods on the deck of your boat. You're going to be chasing this fish basically by gut feel, moving with these fish from their summer locations down the fall highway into those shallower water locations. And so you really have to be willing to stay on the trolling motor, stay on the big motor, cover a lot of water, and just fish what looks good to find where these fish are located. It's very difficult to consistently pattern these fish because not only day to day are they changing, but hour to hour, they're literally changing and moving shallow, following that bait fish, following the forage. And some days they'll be back out deep. So you need to be willing to try different things, kind of get out of your brain what you did yesterday, what you did the hour before, be willing to try new things, new areas, and just continually change locations to catch these fish. A great example of this is actually going to be shown in Sunday's video where I go out and I start the day hammering fish on an A-rig. I probably catch 18 pounds really fast throwing an A-rig. The sun gets up, these fish are starting to actually bust out in the middle of the lake, and as that sun got high, those fish started pushing deeper in the water, and I had to go catch them on a drop shot. And then a couple hours later, they started pushing up shallow again. I was able to catch them on an A-rig. I was able to catch them on a Ned rig, and just consistently changing pattern throughout the day. So you guys are going to want to keep an eye on that video, but it's a perfect testament to how quickly these fish change during the fall transitional months. Some of the key areas that I would recommend you guys go check out are really your high percentage locations. This is not a time of year that I'm trying to get sneaky or tricky. I am looking at your high percentage spots. I'm fishing pretty quickly with my trolling motor on high, moving areas really quickly with my big motor, just trying to check a bunch of different stuff and get a couple bites off of each location. So when I get on the water this time of year, I'm gonna actually start in my deep summer holes, the area that I caught them last, and try to follow them along that highway to the shallow water. So I'm starting on those deep humps, those deep transitions on the bottom, those areas that those fish were last at, because there's still a good chance that some of those fish are left out there. But this is not the time of year that I'm expecting to get out there and hammer on a massive school. It's maybe 2 or 3 fish in that spot, bounce a different spot, catch a couple more fish, and then continue along that path until I locate or catch 20 fish throughout the day. This is not a time of year that I'm going to be able to sit on one spot and hammer on fish. So starting in those deep summer holes where I recently caught them last, and then following that highway to the shallow water that they're going to set up in the fall. Now, to understand what that highway is, you really have to understand where they're trying to get in the fall. And for me, I'm looking for those river mouths, those inflows, or those shallow bays where wind can blow in there and really position the bait effectively. And then I'm going to be looking for the high percentage locations in between your deep water and your fall spots to understand where I'm going to be fishing this time of year. Some other high percentage locations that I'm fishing during the fall transition are going to be your points, those areas, those stopping spots as they move from the deep water to shallow. A point is a perfect location for that because they can set up on it and literally follow that edge to the shallow water they're trying to get to. Some other really good spots are isolated pieces of cover or structure. So if you have some areas that are in mid-depth, I'm talking 10 to 15 foot of water where these fish can set up on quickly, feed and ambush, that's a great spot to check. And then really just kind of junk fishing my way up to those shallow fall locations. And like you guys might be able to tell, this is a lot of junk fishing. I'm not trying to pattern exactly what these fish are feeding on. I'm not trying to figure out exactly what bait I need to be throwing. I'm going to be changing constantly. So I might start out the day with a top water, fish an A-rig as I'm getting up onto those shallow flats, fish a drop shot, fish a Ned rig, just really have a bunch of different baits going that's going to allow me to thoroughly cover those areas, but also fish that water really quickly. And so follow these fish, let the fish tell you what's happening, and really just go out and have fun. Fish a bunch of different techniques, junk fish your way to success during the fall transition for big smallmouth. Really, junk fishing for me is about letting the fish tell you what's going on, fishing the moment, fishing the area that I'm targeting, and understanding what baits are going to be successful in those areas. But here are some of my favorite techniques. Number one bait during the fall transition for me is going to be a jerkbait. Now this is a deeper diving jerkbait. It's a dual Realis 100 DR, so it is a deeper model. This dives down to about 8 to 10 foot of water on 10-pound test line. But I like this because it can cover water really quickly, and that deeper diving bill helps me get it into that mid-depth when these fish are pushing up onto those shallow flats. The rod that I'm going to throw that on is a TFO Tactical Elite 7-foot medium cranking rod. As I've mentioned many times in the past, this was a phenomenal jerkbait rod because it bends really deep down into the blink, but that 7-foot length lets me get a lot of distance on my cast. I'm looking to cover water, so having a rod that I can make long casts with is critically important. And then I'm fishing it on a 10-pound test fluorocarbon line with a high-speed gear ratio bait casting setup. Building on that theme of covering water, we're going to be talking about throwing a crankbait, and this is probably one of my other favorite ways to catch them during the fall transition. Really, in the month of August and September, these fish get on a crankbait really well, and you can cover a ton of water with this bait. It can key you in to where these fish might be, and especially bodies of water like Lake St. Clair or your Great Lakes that are relatively featureless, and you're just trying to burn a lot of water quickly. A crankbait is a phenomenal approach to not only get bites, but triggers strikes from fish that are in that area. It drives bites from those fish that are feeding on the bait, but also moving and in transition to those fall locations. The rod that I'm going to pair this with is a TFO Tactical Glass. It's a 7.4 medium heavy. It's a longer rod that lets me get away from the boat, cover a ton of water, but has a deep parabolic bend to keep these fish pinned when they bite this crankbait and not throw this bait back at me. I'm throwing this on 12 or 14-pound test fluorocarbon line. I don't need this bait to hit bottom. I'm looking to cover water. I'm looking to get this bait above these smallmouth, let them come get this thing, and then a moderate 6-speed gear ratio bait casting setup with a big spool capacity is the way to go. Cover water, move quickly, locate bass, and be willing to change. Now, I wish power fishing were the only way to catch them, but here is sort of your in-between buddy right here. This is a 1/2 ounce football head jig from Beast Coast. This is a jig I've talked about a ton. It's OW Sniper. And then I have on the back of that a dual Realis Wriggle ND. It's a Ned rig style bait with that Elastec plastic. It stands up off the back. But this is really just a bite getter. When you have those high percentage areas that you want to start to pick apart, this is a bigger presentation that's going to get you a lot of big bites, but it slows you down just a little bit. This is a phenomenal approach anytime you're fishing around gobies, but if you take and you replace that bait on the back with a Great Lakes Finesse Snack Craw, you can make it do a better job of imitating those crawfish on the bottom. I'm actually going to be throwing this on a spinning rod this time of year. I like to get longer casts, more distance, and if I'm fishing those deeper water areas, it's a lot easier to control on a spinning rod. So I'm fishing that with 10-pound test braided line to 8 or 10-pound test fluorocarbon. It lets me keep that bait on bottom, get better contact with this. Also get more distance between me and the bait. And then a 7'3" medium spinning rod setup and a high speed gear ratio spinning reel, a 6 speed gear ratio reel. Pick up that line quickly, move those fish when they bite a long ways away. And then bait number 4 is going to be a drop shot. This should be no surprise to anyone, but we're getting into the tail end of drop shot season for me. And this is the X-Bait's Minobi. The Minobi is a phenomenal drop shot bait, but we specifically designed this clear perch color for this time of year. This is when those fish are keying in on those perch really heavy. In August, September, October, when those fish are keyed in on those perch, getting around those shallow grass patches, clear perch is going to be an absolute go-to color for me. I'm going to be fishing this bait both deep and shallow, so my leader length is going to be variable. Right now I have about a 22 to 24 inch leader, and I'm fishing it on 6-pound test fluorocarbon line. You can up that line size depending on your water clarity. I was fishing around some really clean water, which you guys again are going to see in that video on Sunday, but it catches a ton of big fish. Then I'm fishing it on a TFO Resolve 7-1 medium light. Resolve is their higher end model. It's incredibly sensitive. It's very light, but it has a deep bend in the blank, so when you get that bite, you really are able to get a good landing percentage with this rod. And then a high speed gear ratio 6-speed spinning reel. When those fish are running right towards you, you can catch up to those fish quickly, and that's what I'm going with on the spinning reel end. So we've talked power fishing, we've talked finesse, and now we're talking really finesse with the Great Lakes Finesse Flat Cat. This is a bait that I love to throw when those fish get in less than 15 foot of water. I'm fishing this on a small 1/8 ounce jig head, and it's a very small presentation. It's subtle, but it gets a lot of those bigger than average fish to bite. I think there's something to be said about power fishing getting big fish to bite, as well as going really finesse. This isn't a bait that maybe you can cover a ton of water quickly with. When you know fish are in a spot, you can fish this bait on the 1/8 ounce jig head really slowly through there and get those bigger than average fish that aren't biting other lures to bite this small bait. So just like the bait's light, I'm going to be going with a really light rod. This is a 7.6 medium light from TFO. This is going to let me cast this bait a long distance. That medium light's going to bend deep enough in the blank to actually allow me to cast this bait. But because it's a really small hook, a small presentation, you need that lighter setup to really handle this bait effectively. And then I'm fishing it on a high speed gear ratio spinning reel. And then I'm fishing it on really light line, 8 or 6-pound test braided line to 6-pound test fluorocarbon. Go finesse, go light. You want this thing to look really natural down there on the bottom. Don't give those fish any opportunity to not bite this bait, and you will catch a ton of big fish on this during that fall transition when things get really tough. And that's the fall transition breakdown. When you have that hard cold snap, the water temps consistently dropping, the days are getting shorter, you junk fish your way to success to catch big smallmouth bass. Hopefully this video is going to help you guys understand where to look, when to look, and how to approach the fall transition to have success on your bodies of water. So all the gear that I mentioned in today's video is going to be linked down in the description below. It's going to help you go out and have success during these fall transitional months. But if you want to see more fall transition videos, click this video right here. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already. And thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the support. Take care, tight lines. God bless. Pursue your passion.